Welcome to Business Talk here on businesstech.co.za, and time to talk about digital banking, which, as we know, is probably one of the frontiers of finance at the moment. It's certainly changed the way that South Africans open accounts and move money and really think about banks. But the next frontier will likely have to move beyond the technology towards things that are maybe slightly more intangible, things like trust, service, design, and whether a bank can feel maybe less like a grudge purchase and more like something that genuinely works for people. Now, GoTyme Bank, formerly Time Bank, is now entering a new phase under CEO Cheslyn Jacobs with a refreshed brand. It's got a new app and this bold promise of banking made beautiful. That's an ambition to become South Africa's most loved bank. The bank says its new app has already seen 1 million customers migrate in less than 3 months, while it's also expanding its physical presence through dedicated customer hubs in malls across Gauteng and the Western Cape. So to find out more, I'm joined now by Cheslyn Jacobs, the freshly minted, shall I say, CEO, in a sense. Cheslyn, let's start with the phrase at the heart of the brand launch. It's great to have you on. Banking made beautiful. It's not usually a category that people associate with beauty. They usually associate banking with fees or queues or passwords and call centers. So what does banking made beautiful actually mean in real life?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. I think you've captured the essence of what we're trying to do quite nicely. The bank's just over 7 years old now, just over 12.7 million customers in South Africa already. So super happy with the way customers have responded to what we put out there. And I think if you kind of go back to when we launched the business, we were always positioned as this disruptor, this challenger. And I think that essence of who we are won't disappear. And that's what I'm saying. I think you've captured banking made beautiful really nicely in relation to how customers ordinarily see banking, or call it the emotion they would experience with banking. And I think that's most probably the biggest driving force for us, call it adopting this challenge, is ultimately what we think the biggest differentiator going forward is going to be, is how customers experience you as a business. And I think the world's changing so rapidly that maybe 10 years ago, that would be so far down a customer's, call it list of needs. But if one thinks how customers are changing, who those customers are becoming, we actually believe that need's going to go further and further up the hierarchy. And the role in money plays everybody's life. We actually think the real experience you need to have is one that is beautiful and one that creates the sensation of life.
So how would that happen? What would a customer experience differently tomorrow because of this repositioning to make them think of their bank in such a revolutionary way? Because it is revolutionary.
Yeah, so that it will manifest differently for different people, kind of depending on where they are, call it in the phase of their lives. Right? I often say I love to look at the world through the lens of my kids. I've got an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, and they still happen to be the most innocent things in the world, right? Which means there's no filter, there's no inhibition.
Yeah,
almost what you see is what you get all the time.
I've got two daughters, 11 and 9 as well.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. And when you look at how they interact with it, and you try and go back to when you were kind of that age and how you were interacting with similar things, I think there's a vast difference. So ultimately, I think as a business today, you've got, call it, two challenges. You've got the challenge of how do you solve your customer needs based on who your customer is today. But at the same time, how do you create a business that is sustainable for many years to come? And to do that, you have to have the lens of what does your customer look like tomorrow. So in essence, who is your customer of tomorrow? And the reality, Michael, for most business customers of tomorrow are our kids. And the question is, what are they going to want? What are their needs? And how do you start preparing your business today to satisfy them? Now, I think if you think about, again, your daughters and what their demands are, even just of you, right, versus what your demands were of your parents, those things have fundamentally shifted. And I think the approach we've now taken as a business is preparing us for that. But the challenge we've adopted is to say, perfect, customer of today, that's not their natural expectation. But we're going to turn it into their natural expectation. Now, when you interact with our app, and if you have, I think, if you've interacted with the old one and interacting with the new one, you'll see a vast difference. The word we now use is leveling up. Design, user experience, the level of, or how intuitive the app is to what customers' needs are, what we believe their most preferred actions or transaction types are, how we position those things in the app. We've spent so much time trying to understand all of these things and present it in a way for a customer. And every single time they think about doing a transaction, they're going to think about GoTyme Bank, because we make it the easiest for them to complete that action. And I think the more we get that right, I think we call it loving encounters customers will have with our bank.
Yeah, I think a great way to put it. And I can just think of my daughters and as you say, the demands that they make of one as a parent nowadays, and having that first conversation around when you can get your first SIM card for your cell phone at the age of 11, because all of my friends are, and we're communicating now for class projects, and then but the expectations are there. She's digitally native, and she can do things on that device that I can't even do. And I consider myself fairly digitally native, born in 1980. But it's also that user experience is what we've become used to, Ches, with everything that we interact with online. You think Spotify and all of these other things. And so that then becomes the benchmark all over the place. It also, in the economics of banking, it lowers friction, it lowers fees, it creates better access. So it's a great business model as well. Now, Time Bank had already built very strong recognition in South Africa before this rebrand. You had millions of customers, as you said, a clear challenger bank identity. Why rebrand to GoTyme Bank now?
Yeah, so just over 3 years ago, we launched bank number 2 in the Philippines. And that bank has always traveled as GoTyme Bank in the Philippines from day one. But also because of how much our proposition has matured in South Africa, what we actually offer customers in South Africa. We believed, one, there was so much new, so much more that we're now providing. We actually thought there was enough in it to completely do call it the so-called name change one. Number two, we actually think there's massive power in, call it, uniformity. Now we take immense pride in the fact that this business was born in South Africa. It's subsequently been exported to multiple markets across Southeast Asia already, and specifically Philippines being our second bank. And that bank has been doing incredibly well in a really short space. So, and obviously as a business, we've got huge ambitions of even further global expansion. And the question we were then faced with is, how do we best position all of our businesses for success? Now, I'm sure you know about all the big banking brands around the world. I don't think we ever kind of position ourselves as such. But I think you do know or do understand that there's real power in having that level of uniformity. As the world continues to globalize, South Africa often is a lag economy, for lack of a better word. But I think that lag is reducing all the time. And we think there's real power in that level of uniformity. So it's something, call it our broader group, our broader group name in the form of GoTyme Bank. We think that allows to accelerate our next phase of growth, one. But also, number two, actually capture the essence that what we've done is built a business in South Africa that has now become a global enterprise.
Yeah. And, from what I'm hearing, it's definitely to align that global expansion, which is, through that Philippines transaction really taken off, and the numbers there are just phenomenal. And building on what the founder, Conrad Jonker, has established in terms of the chassis, leveling up, as you say, with the app. And I think customers will be feeling that as well. But when you look, it's a very competitive, locally, very competitive landscape, and globally, I'm sure as well. We're not short of banks in South Africa claiming to be digital or customer centric or low cost. If you look at Capitec, they changed the mass market playbook. Discovery's gone behavioral. Bank Zero and others have pushed digital purity. So very simply, in that lot, how is GoTyme different?
So for us, it's all about real value to customers. So we believe we've got to deliver real value to customers every single time they interact with us. And where we've done things very, very differently, like something we're incredibly proud of, is we've not at any single time discriminated against any of our customers based on the financial stature today. And I give you a simple example. If you save with GoTyme Bank today, whether you've got the ability to save 1,000 or the ability to save 100,000, GoTyme Bank is the only bank in South Africa that will pay both those customers market-leading interest rates. Not only market-leading interest rates, the same interest rate to both those customers. Now, I'm not sure who you bank with or how long you bank with them. And if you're really interested in doing the exercise, simply go to the website and you'll see a table on all of their websites that differentiates interest paid to customer based on how much they can save. Now, again, in our challenger mentality, I can, with a high degree of confidence, question whether that's the right thing to do, considering where South Africa find themselves or ourselves as a country, one, and what that actually means for our people. Now, for years and years and years, the 1,000 saver, their money was never ever allowed to work as hard for them as the 100,000 saver. We've never thought that was right. We've never built a product to do that. So we've introduced our savings mechanism to allow every South African's money to work just as hard for them as anybody else's. And therefore, we offer market-leading interest. Now again, I spoke earlier about how customer demands are changing. The other reality, and as you rightfully said, is completely banks in South Africa, and by and large, call it their business models are very, very similar. Their pricing is structured very similarly. The way they pay interest to customers is structured very similarly. And the challenge you have is that, call it you, the so-called outlier, because you do these things differently. And sometimes customers think that you're the one doing it wrong because all of them are doing it in a specific way. But like I said, the customer needs are changing. I promise you, your daughter is going to look at these things very differently when she has to make this decision. And like I said earlier, I believe we are now doing all the right things to ensure that customers of tomorrow, we are right at the top of their.
Yeah, and I think chief amongst those has got to also be the way we interface. I mean, we've all got cell phones almost on us from the time we wake up in the morning and the alarm goes off and you switch it off on the phone to the time you go to bed and you're setting that alarm again or whatever it is. I mean, and the new app, I mean, it's already past 1 million customer migrations in a matter of months. It's a serious adoption number. What do you think explains the pace of that migration?
So one, I think, call it, there was some pent-up demand from our customers, and I think we also pride ourselves in the fact that we've always taken their feedback to heart and not necessarily always delivered on the timing they wanted us to deliver it on. But I think we can confidently say we've always taken their feedback to heart. One. And number two, to a certain degree, we haven't introduced this necessarily in a big bang way. So our marketing team refers to it as breadcrumbing, slowly introducing these enhancements. So I think what the team has done an amazing job in creating this demand that the customer want. Number two is that the way the world's changing again, Michael, is that we've become so dependent on information from our trusted sources, right? So the old school word of mouth phenomenon. And I think that plays that must probably play a more important role today than it ever has before. Now the new app has delivered the real value to customers already. One, it's completely changed the user experience for our customers. Now, your very early adopters, I think they've probably brought on 3, 4, 5 different people that they know who's traditionally used us anyway. And that's why we consistently seen this flywheel effect now that on a daily basis, we actually see more and more people adopt the new app than they did the day before. And we believe it's because what we've introduced and what we've given customers is that they are at a tangible level, actually experiencing these enhancements. And like I said, when you do those things, what often happens is customers repay that favor by adopting, by embracing, and more importantly, by spreading.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't help that you've got that flat savings rate, as you say, of 10% and free pay sharp payments under 5,000 Rand and no charges on overseas card transactions. I mean, that's real value. But when it comes to designing the user experience, it reminds me very much of the late Steve Jobs when he was questioned about the early iPhone. And he said sometimes customers don't understand what they want until you design it for them. And then they realize, and there's like a maze, that, or a light that comes on. Often when you look at banking apps today, especially in the legacy sort of call it incumbent space, a lot of it feels to me like it's been bolted on and it's becoming a little clunky, a little difficult to navigate. There's just a lot going on. What are the key features that you've approached designing this new GoTyme app with that genuinely improve the customer experience? If you just to dive into some of the detail.
Yeah, and I think again, even in your question now, the answer exists. Right? So the way we've now looked at the world is customer first. Right? So we know we've got to understand what our customer needs, not only from a product functionality perspective, but like you said, from a user experience perspective. Obviously, compared to his legacy, we're a lot younger. Right? So I think the way we've architected our business is completely different. I'm sure you're aware that the biggest buzzword in all of business across all of industry today is data, right? And how important the data is, but more importantly, how important understanding what the data is showing you is. Now, one, we're a customer-first business, as well as being a data-first business. So a lot of the decisions we make is in what we as customers do. Something as simple as Michael potentially pressing one or two of the wrong buttons before completing a transaction. We've got visibility of these kind of flows. Maybe from a process, from an experience perspective, we need to swap these two things around because it increases your rate of success. Now, having that kind of data disposal, one, is massively powerful. But more importantly, having the ability to use that data to make these improvements is where the bank really exists. And I think we've done an amazing job at understanding how to use that data to then continue to deliver real value to our customers, Michael. But the real challenge for GoTyme Bank, and it will be the challenge for a long time, is because the reality is we're not going to get younger as a business, right? We're not going to get smaller as a business. The real challenge for us as a business, and something with open arms and get excited about, is how do we maintain that level of agility? How do we maintain that level of innovation as the business grows? And that challenge is something that excites us again.
Yeah. Well, listen, as a business that is still, as you say, growing and scaling, but yet showing phenomenal growth, and these numbers are, it's so interesting to listen to you think like that in still what is a very early part of your journey, and it shows you that it is very much a core focus of the business, and I think will remain one of the key strengths, that agility. I don't see GoTyme being overly hamstrung by corporate bureaucracy anytime soon. Let's just put it that way. One of the more interesting parts of your strategy is this move into customer hubs in malls, and it's almost going from clicks to bricks kind of speak. For a digital bank, it maybe sounds counterintuitive, but I guess as you grow, it's always important to meet your customers where they are. But let's hear it from you. Why does a bank built for the phone still need a kind of physical presence out there in kind of shopping malls?
So we've got this really nice saying in the business that says the more digital the world becomes, the more human you need to be. And at the heart of it, we're still human beings, Michael. Our customers are still human beings. The reality is that I think for a very long time, human interactions become really, really important. And I think potentially more important areas that are more emotive than others. now. Now the reality is that you approach how you manage your money very differently to how you manage what restaurant you're going to go and buy a new meal at, what movie you're going to go and watch at the cinema next week. I think the emotion that drives how you make those decisions is very, very different. And because we believe that on the money side, that emotion's higher, you are a lot more cautious by nature. And as digital as we are, we actually think that human interaction, that physical presence, bridges that gap. So we've got this one word that we created, and we call it phygital. Physical and digital combined gives us digital. And we think with the rebrand and the launch of our customer hubs, I spoke about this leveling up of our business. It brings that to life in a tangible way for customers, right? And it's that age-old thing of, oh, I've used this thing on my phone all the time, I've heard about it, I've read about it. And suddenly I see a physical manifestation of it, it becomes a bit more real for me. So again, the bank is just over 7 years old. We've had amazing partnerships with retail partners across the country over the years. But again, the data showed us that our business has matured to a stage where our customers want us or want to see us independent. And the customer hubs brings that to life for customers. So we're excited about that expansion project. And hopefully by the middle of this year, there'll be 100 of them across the country.
But given that evolution, though, and you say you look at the data and the partnerships have served you well, I have read some reports suggesting that GoTyme has exited Pick and Pay while continue to expand its kiosks through Boxer and TFG alongside these new mall hubs, obviously. Is that correct? And what changed then in your distribution thinking? Because we also know that Pick and Pay is going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment.
Yeah, and Pick and Pay have been amazing retail partners of ours over the years, and Pick and Pay Boxer are an outstanding one for that. So the only change we made in that we simply removed kiosks from the Pick and Pay world. Our customers can still do the full set of transactions they could always do inside that world. That capability will always remain inside that environment, because again, as a fully regulated retail bank, we fully configure the international payment system. So therefore, customers have utility at any of these places. So at a transaction level, no change for the customers. But between the parties, between Pick and Pay and ourselves, the best next step for both businesses would be to remove kiosks. And that's what we've done. And call it our response. Our response was the birth of customer hubs, right? And from a timing perspective, right? Like I said, just over 7 years old. I've been at the bank since day one, expecting to get used to some of these things, but I still don't. The reality is that 12.7 million customers. If you're a GoTyme Bank customer today, you've got 16 years or older and have a South African number. And 12.7 million. 1 in 3.2 eligible South Africans are already GoTyme Bank customers. It's a crazy ratio when you think about it. You said we've got to meet our customers where they are. If we've got 1 in 3 eligible South Africans already as customers, they are now all over. And we've got to meet them where they are. And we think our launch of customer hubs is a natural extension of that.
On the issue of digital divides in South Africa, obviously we're a country with great inequality still. And it comes back to an earlier point that you don't feel it's fair to be offering differentiated interest rates necessarily, given the need to solve for that inequality at a broad societal level. And we often talk about financial inclusion. Do you see physical hubs also as a way potentially for solving for that?
Yeah, so I think for the immediate future, spot on. But I think that will change too over time. The question is how we prepare ourselves for that change. So again, if you think about it, let's talk about our kids for a minute again, Michael. I'm not sure, but my 11-year-old and 9-year-old's never been to a bank branch. I'm assuming your girls have never been into a bank branch either. And then the question you've got to ask yourself is, do you ever see them going right? So that evolution is happening. Right? It's happening at different speeds in different pockets. One. Number two, think about the role your girls now play in your life versus the role you played in your parents' life from an information flow perspective. I think back in the day, all we ever did was listen to our parents because they always knew more than we did. If you think about your relationship with your kids today, the amount of things they actually teaching you is mind blowing, right? And that's because this change is happening. And I don't think it's only happening in so-called higher LSM pockets because information is so much more available now, right? Is that the role, call it our new generation of customers, are playing in our current generation of customers' lives is changing. So even though, yes, we're going with customer now, the right thing to do today, we do believe that customer needs to evolve as well. And we're very, very well aware of that. We've got to pay careful attention to when that need changes and what that need becomes, and then we have to be in a position to respond to that. But where we are today, we think it's spot on the right thing to do, but very, very cognizant of how this is changing.
Yeah, great example there. And yeah, I can't imagine they would, my daughters ever want to go into a bank branch. That's certainly not their list of top things to do on the weekend. Now, you've announced that GoTyme is going to give staff shares in the business as well. And it's always speaks to the culture of an organization when you try and empower your own people. But take me through the thinking of the decision and the timing.
Yeah, so the best time's always now, I suppose. Whenever you decide to do it, the best time's always now. But I think the thinking around it, Michael, is all the essence of ownership. And at a much broader level, we always say we exist to unlock human potential. And the easiest thing to do when we say we want to unlock human potential, we always think of it through the lens of our customers. The reality, we have people who make this every single day. How do we unlock their potential through the work that we do? We think this is one vehicle to do that. Number two, you spoke about the inequality. Now, if you truly want to unlock human potential, I think you've got to be able to hand in heart say you're making a meaningful contribution to distribute wealth or value that your business is creating to the people that's helping create that. And number three, for me personally, we don't run a business. We don't have a culture where we try and separate personal and professional. We think they're exactly the same thing. We actually want our people to be the best versions of themselves outside of the office. And if you're the best father you can be, the best mother, the best brother, the best sister you can be, you're going to be a really great employee anyway. Now, when you have that level of ownership, you come to work every day knowing that the contribution I'm making is not only helping the business grow, but it's helping me and my family grow. And we think that kind of tangible manifestation of contribution becomes really important in the way our people see themselves in. So so we're super excited about this program because all our people inside the business will now have an additional incentive to see GoTyme Bank become the most.
Yeah. That alignment, but also, it helps employees understand the value, the risks, the horizon of ownership, all of those things. And, I think, Cheslyn, there's this broader conversation that we have in South Africa. We talk endlessly about transformation or ownership or participation in the economy and who actually feels like they have a stake, a vested stake in the future. I do think employee ownership is probably one of the more practical ways just to make those ideas tangible inside high growth companies, if it is possible. Now, I know GoTyme is part of the broader Time Group story, as you said, and it includes obviously operations beyond just South Africa and our specific issues. You've been backed by major global investors, including the likes of Nubank. You've reached unicorn status after a Series D funding round. I mean, how does that global platform change what South African customers get as you are on this rocket to the moon?
Yeah, so like I said, the world's globalizing at rate of knots, and I think that's going to continue increasing. And I think as South Africans, I think we're going to start seeing ourselves as a much bigger part of that whole. And we actually think that's important at a psychological level for our people. As a country, what we definitely need to do is find ways to very quickly, in my opinion, is to catalyze real economic growth on the ground. And I give you a great example in the two countries we have banks operating, Philippines and South Africa. At a GDP per capita level, South Africa's GDP per capita is actually twice the size of that of the Philippines. Philippines has approximately twice the number of people. So at a total economy size, same size. But the Philippines is growing at around about 6%. And when you're in that country, you can actually feel and see that economic growth on the streets of the country. Right? And when I'm there, I'm like, gee whiz, this is amazing. You get this energy and you get this feeling of hope, and you can see it in your faces. Now, I can't help but think when South Africa starts growing at 3-4%, what that actually means for our people and how that manifests on the streets of our country. Now, the story we're trying to build, the story we're telling about this business, we're hoping is just one ingredient of being a catalyst to accelerate what South Africa can become. Now, the more we see ourselves at individual level, the more we see ourselves as active participants in what the world is, I think all these small little things start becoming incremental benefits to how we operate. And that's why, again, with rebrand, with being proudly, I can still say today, being the biggest part of the GoTyme Group's global story today still. We carry massive responsibility in executing that strategy, and ultimately, when it's all said and done for us, who happens to be in the business today, this business is going to be around forever, Michael. We said we would want to look back and say that the contribution we've made has made a meaningful difference to the lives of ordinary South Africans. And ultimately, that would be success for us.
Oh, I mean, and it's huge. And I think, I was speaking to David Buckham of Monocle Solutions recently. He wants to do a study on the economic impact of the banking and financial services sector on the South African economy. It is one of our bright spots, broadly speaking, and has continued to grow and punch above its weight at a global level. And I think what you've achieved at GoTyme Bank, it's an example of that now growing into the high growth Philippines and elsewhere. I hope we can get to that 3-4% in the next few years and actually see that change on the streets, Cheslyn. But it's been great chatting to you here on Business Talk and hearing a little bit more about the rebrand and the strategy and the ongoing evolution of one of South Africa's great digital banks here on Business Talk. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having us, Michael.